with BBC Radio Ulster, produced for RTE by Noel Coughlin. The final of Double Challenge will be broadcast this day week, Christmas Day, at the earlier time of 25 to 7. Tonight's winners, the Likely Lads from RD, will be joined in the final by Park Rangers from Dublin, Remember Kinsale, and the Penta Players, also from Dublin. The time now is 7:30. FM3 Music comes on the air on the FM VHF network between 92.5 and 102.7 megahertz, and the announcer on FM3 Music this evening is Pádraig O'Rourke. This is RTÉ Radio1 broadcasting on AM and stereo FM1. Now, Voiceover, our weekly access radio program presented by you, the listeners. This evening's program about the latest addition to the family is introduced by Peter McElwain.
Sounds with which most of us are familiar. The washing of a new baby, be it in the kitchen sink, the bathroom, or as in this case, the nursery of a large Dublin maternity hospital. Some months ago, my wife Eileen advised me that we were to have an addition to the family. In common with most other expectant fathers, I imagine, the news came as a bit of a shock at first, but after a cup of tea or two, the realisation of what was before us slowly sank in. Our two other children had long since passed the infant stage, the youngest was now 6 years old, and visions of sleepless nights, dirty nappies, etc. flashed before me. I had been present at the birth of both previous children, and obviously I wished to assist at this one as well, but as the news sank in, I began to wonder what changes in procedures and attitudes might have occurred in regard to childbirth in the few short years since the arrival of our last child in 1983. To find out what the first-time father of today was thinking, I visited Paul and Joan, who were expecting the imminent arrival of their baby, as I spoke to Paul on their preparations for the event, surrounded as we were by bags ready packed for the quick journey to the hospital.
Joan attended classes run by the hospital, but that particular situation involved only the fathers going along to the last class, which really, we were along for half an hour or an hour one evening just to see a film, and for the lady who was running the course just to give us a chance to ask questions, etc.
Right. But did you learn anything from it?
I learned that everyone else was as scared stiff as I was about the whole thing, especially the fathers.
Right. Now, both yourself and Joan have a fairly exciting and traumatic experience ahead of you, as you both obviously appreciate. But have you given any thought to what the time you're going to spend hanging around waiting while the birth is taking place? Because obviously there'll be time that you'll spend by yourself, and Joan will be inside in the labour ward, and then you'll be in and out and so on. Have you got yourself a good book to read, or last Sunday's newspapers, or anything like that?
I haven't actually, but we did go on a tour of the labour ward, so we know where everything is, etc. So I'll probably just nip down and go out for a game of snooker, or maybe go off and play a match and come back a couple hours later.
Good idea, yeah.
With a can of Coke and the paper.
I'm sure she'd really appreciate that.
She probably would. She'd be damn glad to have me out of there, I think, until things start to happen.
Right, yeah. So it's all imminent now. It's all due to happen tomorrow anyway.
That's the big day. Tomorrow's D-Day, but with it being the first child, she'll probably go a few days over, or that's the norm anyway that we hear. So as long as I can take my holidays and tie them in with the Christmas holidays, I'll be a happy man.
Good man. So. Well, I never met Joan before until I met you 10 minutes ago or so, and I mentioned to her that I thought she looked radiant or blooming. Have you noticed, from your own point of view now, that she's looking particularly well on the pregnancy, as they say?
She looks absolutely fantastic, and these days of frost and smog and everything, she's like an electric blanket in bed. I don't know how she generates that heat, but by God, she's fine and warm.
Yeah.
So it's just in her nature to sail through things like that.
So far, so good. But another thought had struck me while talking to Paul. He and Joan were expecting their first child. I already had two, both of whom were likely to have opinions on the forthcoming disruption to the routine of their comfortable family life, especially in regard as to who was going to look after the new baby.
I don't know.
Well, Mammy and Daddy or who?
Or Neil.
Hmm.
Changing the nappies would be easy.
Would it?
Yeah, because you'd only need some, like, rubber gloves or anything to handle it.
Oh, because are they dirty?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, but they aren't dirty all over, so you might need the gloves. But if they were very dirty all over, then you'd need them.
Well, will you be helping to look after the baby, you know, to feed it and everything?
Well, yeah, but the problem is that when the baby's crying, you don't know what it wants.
Well, that's always the way with babies, isn't it, really? It might be food or it might be a dirty nappy, so I suppose you have to have a look and see.
Yeah, like if you gave him a bottle and he didn't drink it, then you take it away. And if you looked at its nappy and it wasn't dirty, and you gave him, and then you gave him food and he ate it, that would mean he wanted food.
Neil, you're the older brother, you're Owen's older brother.
Yeah,
What do you think about having a baby, a new baby in the family?
I don't know.
You don't know if you don't think you're not sure if it's a good idea.
No, I'm not sure if it's a good idea.
Oh, that's a pity because you are going to have one, you know.
Yeah,
Which would you prefer, a boy or a girl?
a boy.
You're very definite about that. You wouldn't even consider a girl at all.
No,
And what happens if it is a girl? You haven't even thought about that.
no, if it is a girl, then you will have dolls all over the place.
Oh, well, that's not strictly true because, I mean,
Loads of dolls.
well, sure you can play with them as well.
Oh, come on. I'd tear the head off him.
Right. Well, tell me, who's, when the baby arrives, who's going to look after it?
Mammy.
Why, Mammy?
She have it.
Yeah, but she was having hard work to push it out for him.
Yeah. But, I mean, surely Daddy has to help.
You are going to feed it.
Me, yeah.
And you're
Okay.
going to change your nappies.
My
And you're
nappies.
going to put it to bed. And you're going to do whatever it is.
Wash it and all those things.
Yeah, throw it into
Oh,
that.
no.
Faced with such positive thoughts on the matter, and realising that I would have to rely to some extent on the children's cooperation in the early stages of the new baby, I sought the advice of Brian and Jacinta, who had just recently introduced baby sister Megan to our young brothers.
I think it's important to involve the other children of the household if it's not your first, because they feel part of it, and it is a family event bringing the child home. And the way we arranged it was that I collected Jacinta, but the two boys collected Megan, and they made up the basket and all the bits and pieces from a pre-arranged list. And they were the ones who collected the new baby, and I think it's worked very well for them.
Good.
Yeah, also we kept them out of school. They go to play school and primary school, but we kept them out of school purposely for a week because, you know, it's such a special occasion, but as well we didn't want them to feel at any stage that they were being dumped or kept out of the way.
This is after the child Megan arrived home. They were in school during the week that Jacinta was in hospital, but it was when the settling in period, if you like, when Megan came home, that they stayed home as well.
Well, with Megan's arrival being on the date that was somewhat later than she was expected, did that cause any disruption? Did she arrive in the middle of the night, or did she decide to arrive at a more suitable time? Or
Well, this time I remember waking Brian up at 4:30 in the morning and saying the baby's on the way, and he sat up and said, "Far out, that's great."
And then promptly goes back to sleep again.
And the previous occasions, like, it was really a case of back down the hatches, oh my God, I've no deodorant, all these kind of things. Where this time, the whole lead up was much calmer. Now, part of that may have been that I had holidays and I was out of work for longer than on the other two occasions. I had 3 months off before I had her, and I think that contributed an awful lot to it. There was less tension generally, I suppose.
Well, Megan's here with the snow, and she's been noisier than usual. I mean, and that's being quiet by normal baby standards. I mean, she's very good, I gather, is she?
She's a very, very good child, yeah, great sleeper. And bringing her home hasn't been as traumatic as we expected. Everybody said 3 children, you know, adds to the stress level by so many points. And I must say, already we feel that she's always been here. She just has fitted in very well.
At this point, I began to consider the position of Eileen, the expectant mother, and the one who was, after all, to play the central role in the drama unfolding before us. She'd always been, thank God, a very athletic and fit woman, but judging by the number of textbooks lying around the house of late, she obviously felt it necessary to brush up on the finer points of child delivery, and had even begun attending antenatal classes in the hospital to relearn helpful breathing techniques, amongst other things. In order to refresh my own memory, and over the sound of the fetal monitor in the background, I asked expectant mother Ursula how she was preparing for the arrival of her latest.
Is this your first birth baby, Ursula?
Yeah.
And are you surprised at how noisy he or she is already when you're...
I'm used to it by now.
When's the baby due? In about many more days?
About 3 weeks.
3 weeks now. Nurse, could I turn to you? Could you tell me exactly what we're listening to there, and what's happening, what we're seeing on the screen?
The baby's heartbeat that you're monitoring here. It just gives an idea of the well-being of the baby. It's constantly changing, which is a good sign. And if the baby moves, the acceleration in the heartbeat.
Well, what would be, I mean, a normal adult heartbeat is what, about, at rest, be about 60, 70?
Depends if you're athletic or less,
Yeah.
70, 80.
And what would the babies be?
The baby's twice that, from 20 to 160.
Which would be a bit like me after climbing the stairs.
That's right.
Yeah. And Ursula, I mean, at this stage, the baby's obviously fairly large. You're being kicked around the place, are you, various times of the day?
Yeah, sometimes it's very active.
Right.
It's okay because, you know, everything's grand.
And can I ask you now, is father taking in any of the festivities or whatever we might
Oh yes, he's very involved. Yeah.
Good.
He likes to see the baby move and that sort of thing, you know.
Right.
So he's looking forward to it.
And does he intend to be present at birth?
Oh yes. He's afraid he'll miss it in time.
Eileen and I live in West Wicklow, some 20 miles or so from the National Maternity Hospital, where Eileen was booked in to have the baby. Now, our car is 7 or 8 years old, and like all vehicles of that vintage can be temperamental at times. What would happen, I thought, if the baby decided to arrive in the middle of the night and I couldn't get the car started? Station Officer Joe Brennan and the ambulance crews at Tala Fire Station did their best to put my mind at rest and demonstrated some of the equipment available to meet such emergencies.
These used to be drawers we used to have just to pull out, but now we have it as a case that we can just pull out and bring into the house with us. And we'd also bring a first aid kit. There's a little satchel we have. And this is equipped with mucus extractors for babies. We also have foil blankets to wrap the baby in when it's born. We have a baby bamboo bag, just in case there's any difficulties with breathing or anything. We can connect it up to our oxygen and just ventilate the baby. We have all the clamps, umbilical cord clamps, that off. We have everything for the expectant mammy.
What about resuscitation gear for the expectant father now?
Well, if the father... Usually the father goes on this stretcher after he collapses in the back of the ambulance. But he just faints. He's alright, he's alright. We have antilocks there too.
Painkiller.
Oh, here? Yes, yeah.
If you can give the expectant mother a few whiffs of that.
But she takes this on her own bat. We offer it to her, and she has to hold the mask herself.
Right.
Yeah. It's just a matter of putting the mask on, and she just breathes it in.
Right.
It's a kind of a painkiller,
Yes.
so to speak. Takes her mind off things.
Well, it's completely harmless.
But Sean, have you personally been involved in any roadside births to put that description on it?
Well, I have, yes, but the usual thing is if it's a first child, you have no rush, you can take it down to the hospital. Well, on the second child or any other child, it's a little bit more, the child can just come, you have no say in the matter, that's if you can put it like that. Nature takes its course, yeah. Usually, my couple of births was, the both of them were on the Long Mile Road, on the way to the Coombe. The Long Mile Road seems to be the road that we all get caught on. It just gets so far and we have to pull in on the Long Mile Road, you know, and nothing unusual, just that you just observe and try and help them.
Right.
Thank God my two births were straightforward and over in a flash.
Well, how many are on the crew in the ambulance? It's two, is it? Yeah, one would be in the back, presumably, with the patient. Yeah.
Usually the fellow in the back, if on inspection he finds that the child is about to be delivered, he would just ask the driver to stop. The driver would pull in and get into the back and assist. Simple as that.
Right.
And you just if the child is born, depending on how near you are at the hospital, you would cut the cord or not cut the cord.
Right.
You know, and make the mother comfortable and the child comfortable, wrap them up and then proceed to the hospital. Just you get on the radio and then tell the hospital you're arriving with both the mother and baby delivered.
But I recall one incident now, I think it was way back in the summer in July, and we were called on the radio to proceed to the Green Hills Road where a woman was supposed to have had or was having a baby in the back seat of the car. So of course we arrived on the scene, and like everything else, from time to time you're in sticky situations. If you're part of the phone, don't know whether that's allowed. So anyway, we checked the lady over, and we decided then that it was a bit too late to take her out of the car. So we had to take all her equipment from the back of the ambulance and deliver the baby.
I presume it wasn't a large Mercedes estate or anything.
Unfortunately, it was a small car and a two-door at that. So everything went fairly well anyhow, and the baby wife was, and we did our best and checked the baby out, cut the cord, all the usual that you have to do, clamps and what have you, made her as comfortable as possible, and then brought it to the Coombe. And of course, all the work was done for the nurses.
Of course, yeah.
When we arrived, it was all well and truly over.
And the baby's called Huey, of course.
No, it's not.
Oh.
No, I didn't get that.
No, we delivered the baby on the way to the hospital.
The back of the ambulance.
And the next shift we were on, we went to the house beside it. And I was on the ambulance, say, with John maybe or somebody, this time. And the woman says, "Do you deliver all the babies in this area?" You know, and actually she was going, she didn't deliver, but she was going to the Coombe as well, you know.
Yeah.
That's only recent, isn't it?
I remember you telling me now, it's only a while back.
I don't even know who was with you at the time.
You're making a name for yourself there.
The local midwife, yeah.
It's not by choice, it's just by accident, yeah.
So what would you suggest then to make life easier for them and for you in future that they should err on?
To get a taxi to first pain.
Having a baby in Holles Street was one thing, and on the Long Mile Road quite another. But to complicate matters further, I then heard of a couple, Frank and Muriel, who had decided to abandon even the basic notion of the mother lying down for the birth, be it in hospital or in an ambulance, and who had chosen instead for Muriel to adopt a standing squat for the delivery of two of their three children.
I personally adopted a squatting, what's called a standing squat, where Frank held me and I squatted. It was a standing squat because the doctor that was attending us felt that if I fully squatted, he couldn't see what was going on, and he did want to see. that. But I don't think it really matters what position you adopt. The important thing for me was that I was in control, and that was what I felt was important. If anything was going wrong, the doctors were there. That was their function if something went wrong. But so long as everything was progressing okay or naturally, then Frank and I were going to do it our way. And that we didn't believe that we were putting the baby at risk in any way by not having a traditional horizontal birth. If anything, we were probably making their experience of birth better.
Having researched the subject then, as you've said, and having scoured the libraries for the various books on the subject, you chose this particular method. For what particular reason did you choose this one?
I don't think there was any one particular reason. I think there was a number of reasons. Firstly, I've felt that because I can squat naturally, that this was a good way for me to have a baby. It put me more in control, which was important for me, because I think the whole process of having a baby has become very medicalized, and for both Frank and myself, having a doctor there is important, or a nurse there is important, but that they're there as invited observers in case something goes wrong. And by this way I felt that I was more in control. I think the second reason was that to me, if you're lying horizontal, gravity isn't helping you. Whereas if you're upright and active and moving about, gravity is helping you. And therefore it is possibly making the whole process easier on you, and definitely I feel makes it much easier on the baby. The baby isn't having to work against gravity. And just from the way they actually arrived, how much happier both Rebecca and Heidi were. They just sort of plopped out and looked around, put the thumb, Rebecca just popped out, put the thumb in her mouth, and that was it. Heidi was very, very content and happy and didn't cry and that sort of thing. It also involved Frank in the whole birth, and so he was an active partner of mine, rather than an observer waiting for his child to be born. And I think that was important for us as a couple.
Frank, I gather from what Muriel said also that you were involved in releasing the child from its mother with Heidi.
Well, having sort of negotiated our wishes with the doctor beforehand, they were very cooperative, and they allowed us to do it our way very much so, and be very much involved. And it was actually just the doctor's suggestion, totally out of the blue, that I cut the cord. I felt a bit strange. I felt a bit like a TD cutting a tape to open a factory or something like that. But I suppose it was symbolic. It's like almost like a ceremony, symbolically severing a child's links with its mother and becoming an independent being in its own right, and giving it the freedom to live.
Now my thoughts turn to my own plans for the event. Judging by past experiences, baby will probably choose to arrive at the most inconvenient time possible. Work was important, of course, but what about normal social activities, etc.? Paul Flanagan had some difficulties in this regard, and he told me of them as we talked on a busy Dublin street.
My wife awoke around 12:30 early on the Wednesday morning of the 15th, and she said it's time to go to Hollis Street. Of course, myself, not saying I'm an old hand at this kind of thing, I've been through it before, but I just casually got up. She had her case already arranged the night before, or a couple of nights before, and we just made our way down towards Hollis Street. Of course, we dropped the uncle in with her parents.
Were they on the way? They're on the same route in?
They're on the same route in, you know, which made things very easy for ourselves. So we just continued down to Hollis Street then, and just signed her in. And
and I stayed there the night, just in case she needed any assistance, you know.
I think you had other plans in mind for that particular day, hadn't you?
I did. Well, I intended to go and view the football match with Ireland and Malta in the pub in the afternoon to get some time off, that kind of thing. But seeing as things worked out the way they did, the baby arrived in the same day, and I still got to see the match.
Well done, yeah.
Preparation.
Well, now, can I ask you, I mean, between ourselves, like, if it had come to the crunch and the baby was due at about the same time as the kick-off whistle was due to go, which do you think you might have opted for? This won't be held in evidence now, and using evidence against you.
Of course, I mean, the baby comes first all the time. But of course, this is family planning for you again. The previous boy was born in the morning as well at 5 to 4, so it didn't come as too great or too new to me to know that the other fellow would arrive in the morning, because they seem to love to kill my hours of sleep, you know. To kind of stop them, you know. But no, not at all. I mean, there's no question of really anything interrupting as far as anything being interrupted as far as the baby was concerned.
Well, you attended the birth yourself on both occasions.
I did, yeah.
And how did it go on each occasion?
Very well. The first time was more emotional because it was the first child, obviously, and my wife was very young. I was concerned for her, so you were kind of in a state of suspense as to what was actually going to happen. You didn't want to think the worst, the possibility of different types of things which may go wrong with a pregnancy.
Yeah.
You were just hoping that everything would go well and both mother and baby would be all right. And luckily it did do so. The second time I wasn't as afraid. I was, something in the back of my mind even more so was the fact that my wife's brother had a Down syndrome child only 6 weeks earlier, which kind of plays in your mind. Yeah. And you're kind of wondering yourself, well, is this, not saying it's a hereditary factor or anything like that, but it's just sitting there, you know. Right. You kind of wonder, I thought that wouldn't make any difference or anything like that. It's just that she tended to be more wound up, let's say, and it didn't help things when it came to delivery. Right. Because the fact that she was so tense that things didn't go as smoothly initially, but then after a while, and you know, with the help of the nurses, they do a great job. They really settled her down and got her prepared for.
Well, on the point of the delivery now, and my wife gives out to me whenever I say it all went very quickly and it was an easy delivery and so on. I mean, she says it was her that was having the baby and not me. Mm-hmm. But in regard to Grace now on this occasion, would you call it a fairly easy delivery given the circumstances and what have you?
Yes, I would, yes.
Would Grace agree with you?
Yes, she would. Good. Because the previous child he was smaller, but there was stitches needed. Yeah. Maybe it's because it was his first baby. But on the second boy, she didn't need stitches, and she was let out of hospital after 3 days, you know, which is pretty quick.
Thankfully, Ireland had qualified for the World Cup sometime before we were due, so I didn't have to worry too much about that anymore. The days passed by, and D-Day quickly approached. As often happens, there were 1 or 2 false alarms, but at 2:30, one dark Wicklow morning, Eileen prodded me awake to announce that we were on the way. The car did start, and within a remarkably short space of time, we were parked right outside the hospital. Eileen's particulars were quickly taken down, and I was parked in the austere surroundings of the relatives' waiting room. Although I appreciate that it's easy for me to say, the labour was fairly quick, and I was pleased to be so obviously helpful to Eileen, both by holding her by the bed and by just being there.
No, I was just going to say what I do in the
interest. Kind to me. That is good girl.
Just relax.
That's it. Hands.
Relax and hide there.
Okay. Well done, look, baby.
Oh, lovely.
That's great. Well done.
Oh, it's in the middle of the Good girl, Rob. It's all, it's there. Good girl, Rob. Good girl. Good girl. Oh boy. Oh, no. It's okay.
On the neck. Yeah, no, it's loose.
No, it's alright. It's okay. It's not tight.
Okay, we'll put it down here and try and please relax. Please, sorry.
Yeah, they have that noise. Oh, no.
That's great, Bobby. That's fine. We'll try him off now. Please don't sit too long. Oh, there was wrong.
Injection here, okay, for the October.
Yeah, it's
That's Thomas William. At least that's what it was. Before we came in anyway.
Good girl. There you are.
No. Oh, no. Look.
Well, it certainly is extraordinary, but all I can say, having listened to the last 2 minutes of that radio program, is that if the occasion ever arises, there is no way in the world that I'm going to be in the labour ward holding my wife's hand. Just listening to it on radio was too much for me. In any case, happy Christmas to the McIlwains and to all our listeners and contributors, especially young Master Thomas William. Voiceover returns on New Year's Day with lots of new ideas for the future, but there's plenty of room for more. Please contact Voiceover, RTÉ Radio1, Dublin 4, and the series producer is Pat Leahy. Sian Tamanish no Hochtachog, Mish Anuach Dolio Egg Moidana Honre.
Gmandéib, Tuisgit an Rúmán go dearna Saidúri, Schlecht Chlua Vig Léir Shuga Harte Mishwara in der Schachtene, as Gula Khar Krachta. Dine go wona Garmanach as Ungarach as Bútach ar Fóin Sin. Beisho an Slogo Bavúla Hav Liena Naid Beersmacht Stalinach an Nochtran Ceausescu. Chwysio ar Chwrtstát chun a Hirán in Jov. Bhí sloga mórtaí mór ambassad na Rúmáin a Budapest píomhchána Hungáir tróna na an réimeis sa Rúmáin agus na géir leanana atá dhéanann sin. Tuiscit a gneann an IUC andal chun cinn sa fisraí tarbon fhuiscithe ólais le paramiltaí. Tá FG tá gobal faoin leasfríomh Constable John Stevens le fear a gáhar chúis na scileoireachta chiistú. Tigtúir gáscóir den bhfuil bainte